I now call this special call open meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now hold a public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2025 property tax levy. This proposal was published in the Quad City Times on March 12, 2024. This is a public hearing to take public comment either in writing or orally and is not a public debate. The public hearing is required as part of the district's certified budget. The notice provided to each resident shows the maximum property taxes the district will adopt as part of the certified budget, which will be adopted by April 30th. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone or call 1-312-626-6799 and enter meeting ID 928-2262-4700 and passcode 868494. State your name and address for the record. Each speaker will have a maximum of 2 minutes. Your public comments will be considered as part of the district's final budget discussions. I don't hear any phones ringing. All right, seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, meeting adjourned. All right, I now call to order the regular meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Director Barnes, would you please read our mission and vision statements?
Mission statement. The Davenport Community School District is dedicated to growing excellence in academics, the arts, and athletics for every child by ensuring the highest quality education in an environment shaped by our diverse community, preparing our students to be lifelong learners and productive citizens. Vision statement. Education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you, Director Barnes. Director Pasha, would you please read our guiding principles?
Guiding principles, opportunity. We provide abundant opportunities to empower our students to reach their full potential academically, creatively, and socially. Collaboration. We foster an environment that allows students, families, and community stakeholders to come together for the betterment of our students' education and future. Transparency. We share relevant and important information with our students, families, and the community to maintain open and productive communication.
Thank you, Director Pasha. And Superintendent Schneckloff, would you please read our goals?
Goal number 2, to increase access and success for all students. And goal number 4, to foster the innovative use of facilities, finances, and staff.
Thank you. We'll move on to public hearing and action. I will now conduct a public hearing on the artificial turf fields at Central High, North High, and West High project as shown in the 95% plan and specification. Notice of the hearing was published in the Quad City Times on February 19, 2024. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone or call 1-312-626-6799 and enter meeting ID 928-2262-4700 and passcode 868494. State your name and address for the record. Someday someone's gonna show up for one of these. No phones, no phones, all right. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. May I have a motion? Director Costume.
Move the board approve the plans and specifications for the artificial turf fields at Central High, North High, and West High project as shown in the 95% plans and specifications.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Three-way tie there. All right. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right. Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Motion carries. We don't have any recognitions tonight. We will move on to presentations. Up first, we have subject 4.01, migration is beautiful. I will turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you. We are very lucky tonight to have a wonderful group of human beings with us. Monthly, the president and vice president of the school board and I meet with the LULAC Council 10. And one of the huge initiatives that they started several years ago was to be able to incorporate local history into some of our teaching standards. And so the presentation that you're going to hear tonight is the culmination of that work. They recently came off classroom visits where they saw the work being taught inside the classrooms. And from my own experience, whenever you teach about something that's in your own backyard or things that are connected to where you live, the learning is richer. And so it was with great pleasure that I welcome Janet Weaver from the University of Iowa. We have Deidre Doherty, did I say that right? Who assisted with this project, and obviously Mr. Joe Morales, who is the educational connection between LULAC and really these people have really pushed this project past the finish line and looking to continue this all across the Midwest. The work that you're about to see is gaining national attention, just in the fact of the collaboration that has occurred into this project. So I'll turn it over to you if you don't mind, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much for being here.
So thank you, sir. And I think we'll go ahead and start with with Dr. Weaver, who's going to provide an overview of the program, and then Dr. Doherty will give us the future and ongoing activities, and I'm going to give you the information on the framework, how we came about this. So,
okay. So could you advance this slide? So this is who we are. Superintendent Schneckloff has already introduced us, but I want to also draw attention to a major collaborator in this initiative, Melissa Trimble, curriculum and instruction specialist here in the Davenport School District, without whom this would simply not have been possible. So let's have the next slide, please. So it was Mike Reyes of LULAC Council 10 who first approached the school district and TJ Schneckloff initially about developing lessons for the K-12 students on the subject of Iowa Latino history. And TJ thankfully enthusiastically agreed to this and suggested that we might focus on the third grade because the subject of migration and immigration is one of the core standards for social studies for that grade. And in this photo taken in 2022, Hayes Elementary students are engaging with the lessons for the first time. But before we delve into those lessons, I want to go back and explain a little bit of how we got there. Next slide, please. I am from the Iowa Women's Archives at the University of Iowa, an organization founded in 1992 by two Iowa women who you see here. Louise Noun on the right was active in the Democratic Party. Mary Louise Smith on the left was a prominent Republican, in fact, the first woman to chair the Republican National Committee back in the 1970s. Throughout the years, the past 32 years, our mission has been to collect historical documents that illuminate the lives of Iowa women, their families, and communities. Next slide, please. So today, in the Iowa Women's Archives, located right in the University of Iowa main library, The Iowa Women's Archives holds about 1,500 collections that shine a light on this history that was previously underrepresented. You might think about us as a warehouse of primary source material. So our materials relate, as you can see from this slide, to the history of the women's suffrage movement, World War II, women and sports. We have many, many collections about women and basketball in Iowa, which are getting a lot of use these days. But we can take it right back to when there was 6-on-6 girls basketball all across Iowa's rural communities. And of course, Nancy Drew, Mildred Wirt Benson was the first author of the Nancy Drew series from Iowa. So, but we noted about 20 years ago, and I was there then, that we lacked materials about Iowa's Latino history, and that relatively little was known about this. So we started a project to start to preserve that history. Next slide, please. So this was called the Mujeres Latinas Project, and we went out and recorded about 120 oral history interviews around the state, and numerous records started to come in that illuminated this history. We quickly joined with LULAC in Davenport here, and working with LULAC, the next slide please, we developed a website called Migration is Beautiful so that this history could be more visible. And so I brought you some website cards so that you can look at that in your own time and explore the different areas. But there is a lot of Iowa Latino history preserved on that website, and all of it connects back to the primary documents preserved in the library. But working with LULAC, the question then became, what about this being taught in K-12? And so this is where we connected with the Davenport School District. So next slide, please. So working with Melissa Trimble and my colleagues, some of whom are not here, but Joe Morales and another woman, Jamila Transtenvote, we started preparing the first five Latino lessons. So these lessons encourage students to think like historians and engage with primary documents, and so much of it is about Davenport local history. So they were, as I mentioned before, taught for the first time in 2022, and now they're also being taught in Columbus Junction, Muscatine, and West Liberty. So if we go to the next slide, we can see this timeline. You know, archives and building them takes a lot of time, and then getting that written into history is a significant chunk of time. So we're now up to 2023, and this was when Melissa came to us and said, what about writing a companion book to go with the lessons? So we enthusiastically took up that task, and we brought one of the books. We started last year, and it went to printing in October, and was 1,300 copies were distributed to every third grade classroom throughout the Davenport School District, and they were taught for the first time. The lessons were taught with the book in January this year. So that's where we're up to right now. And can you go to the next slide? And so here, for those of you who don't have books, you can just see this is some of the page proofs for the book. It starts with, the next slide please, the story of the monarch, the journey of the monarch butterfly, which sort of parallels the journey of migration of the first Latinas who came to Iowa in the early 1900s. Next slide. And so then we start to dig into the historical documents, and with the story of Martina Morado, who comes from central Mexico in 1910 with her mother. She's 13 years old. We're drawing from the diaries that she wrote. She wrote when she was older, that are preserved in the archives. The original is actually in Spanish. Might go to the next slide. I don't know what's the next slide. And there we see her journey captured in a map, coming from the town of Lomita by donkey first, and then by train, and then finally she comes to Des Moines with her family. So I think I'm ready now. Turn to the next slide, and I want to pass this over to Joe.
Thank you. And first, I want to thank the board for this opportunity to share our efforts and to share this information with you, and to continue on with the effort to develop this more. And you're going to hear about the future here with Dr. Doherty here in a few minutes here, but thank you again for this opportunity. Overall, the overall effort, the overall principle of developing these lesson plans was based on a guiding principle of relevance. And the relevance here was the Davenport area. For example, Cook's Point. Holy City across 74 there on the other side, but the focus was Cook's Point. And to take those stories, those records, those sources of documents that we could to put this lesson plan together. Again, it was relevance. And we found, based on the instruction that we've observed so far, that has captured our students' attention and learning effort. And that's a very key thing. Guiding principle was that of relevance in developing these lessons plans. We conducted a task analysis. We focused in on the 3rd grade level for the Iowa Common Core Social Studies. And based on what Dr. Weaver just shared with you, the knowledge, the repository of sources that she had, their videos, testimonies, pictures, documents that supported that knowledge, in this case, here, the research, the records. And we took that and we looked at that and ensured that that information complied with the 3rd grade Iowa Common Core Social Studies. And at that point, we decided that we also wanted to ensure that we made this as a teacher's resource, as a teacher's perspective, to provide this as a package to the teachers so that they could provide that instruction in their classrooms. And that was one of the task analysis efforts that we looked at in terms of making sure that that happened. Under the pacing items, as far as the development, we used the migration of the monarch butterfly as the model. The migration of that monarch butterfly is natural, it's nature, it occurs. And we use that as a model, as a standard, saying, okay, they do it, we do it, it's all of us. Whether it be Latino, whether it be German, whether it be Polish, we've all done that. We've all had some migration into our great country, and we use that as the model. And at that point, we also established that being the key term for the development of the lesson plan. Migration is beautiful. That was our pacing items that we looked at, and that was the model. As far as elaborations, I think you already probably have an idea about the elaborations. We actually have stories of our citizens here in the Davenport, greater Davenport area, and in the Quad Cities area. We have stories of their experiences here, their challenges, and their upbringing in our community here. So we're able to use that to develop these lesson plans. There was exceptional collaboration effort. It was an exceptional collaboration effort, and when we got to the implementation decisions, we definitely tied in with the Davenport Community School District Curriculum Department. We brought those lesson plans to the district and asked for clarity and detail about our efforts. And it was exceptional collaboration. University of Iowa, Knox College, LULAC Council 10, and then even some community members out there in the city of Davenport. And again, I already mentioned to you about being a teacher resource. That was our focus, is to bring that to you as a teacher resource. And as a result of this collaborative effort with the district, and based on their suggestion, you hold in your hands Migration is Beautiful Blue Book. And that was used in an I-Zerba class, and using that, and the students were engaged in that. They were looking at the pictures, they were looking at the stories, they're talking about the stories. And in one of the group sessions, one of the small group format sessions that we identified within the implementation decision, was that they were sharing stories about their fathers, their grandfathers, their aunts, their uncles, their great-grandfathers with each other. That's where it comes to relevance and with the student. Those are the main points I wanted to share with you. An exceptional collaborative effort with all its key stakeholders to make this happen. And again, without the curriculum department, and sir, without your guidance and direction, superintendent, without your guidance and direction and support throughout this whole effort, we highly appreciate that from LULAC Council 10 to get this and to be using it in the district. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Deidre, who is going to give you an update as far as current and then future initiatives.
The next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please. So I want to elaborate a little bit on where the lessons fit in terms of the topography of education, right? So drawing on the work of social studies scholars, they talk a lot about usable pasts, about having children create their senses of selves relative to their own pasts. And what this lesson series does is it helps children create usable pasts about their own space, which is pretty phenomenal. A second thing that it does is it brings in something that is increasingly acknowledged as an important form of learning, place-based learning. And so what it does is it essentially says, America happens here. America happens everywhere. And so by doing both of those things, the Migration is Beautiful lessons help students cultivate their own usable pasts, and they're groundbreaking in their place-based attempt at doing so. And they also tie in with the district's guidelines, mission, goals. I saw those earlier. As we talked about earlier, the lesson series is aligned not only with the Iowa Common Core standards, but it references the standards set by the National Council of Teachers of Social Studies and the American Association of School Librarians, which is also important. And they're grounded in what historian Tom Bober has said are three interlocking concerns about teaching primary sources at the elementary and middle level. The first is you need compelling sources, and that's what we have. We have a child that children can relate to. We can ask questions of the picture. We can ask children to ask questions. What is she doing? What might she have been thinking, right? The second is each lesson introduces analysis strategies. So while we're looking at that picture and while we're pairing it with the text, students are developing their ability to critically read, to analyze, to learn chronological and historical thought and reasoning. And then the third connection, which is, or the third sort of consideration is there a connection to other real learning that's taking place? And there is. Not only because these are are aligned with standards, but because they're also aligned with inquiry anchor standards from the state of Iowa. We have students gathering and evaluating sources, right? We have students developing claims and using evidence, and there are literacy standards that are also kind of obliquely like evidence throughout that. So as Joe said, we drew on best practices. This has been a totally collaborative project. I'm a hanger-oner. I just came in at the end, and I'm gonna talk a little bit more about where we're going next. Next slide. All right. Anyways, so collaborative. As we've all mentioned, so many people have been on board from the beginning, and the most recent group of people is my group of students from Knox College who took a half-credit class this past fall on Mexican-American history in the Midwest and did a 2-week December immersion where we went to the University of Iowa. We did walking tours around the Quad Cities. We visited third grade classrooms. We talked to teachers, and we thought about how to take the lesson plans that had been put in place last year and pair them with the actual book. So the lessons now reference the book and say, hey, turn to page X, this is what's happening. And we streamlined kind of the PowerPoint and made sure that the standards were aligned with the objectives, were aligned with the assessment, and that there was sort of meaningful continuity among the lessons. So I think that is it. Right. Next slide. Okay. Yeah.
Well, you can keep going.
Yeah. Okay.
That's page about World War II. Next slide. And finally, we end with the cultural heritage component. Migration is belonging and belonging. And that's sort of introducing the idea of the Day of the Dead that Latinos have brought to the United States and Iowa. And this really is the memoir of one person who explains her Day of the Dead altar that she made for her mother.
And I'll just pass out, sorry, this is actually the inquiry standards, the content standards, and then a sample lesson text. So you can see how they all weave together.
Anyway, I do want to thank you so much for inviting us here and also for the tremendously rich collaboration that we've gone through for the past several years.
Yes.
And I've come out of it with this amazing respect for the work that the teachers do in this district. And so I very much appreciate having had the opportunity to work with them and learn from all of you. We're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Oh, actually,
There's no
we
more
can also talk about
there's
this. I'm
one
sorry.
more
Okay.
One more slide.
So next step actually is to scale this up, to bring the idea of primary source analysis, local history, usable past to the middle and perhaps high school level. So thinking about how it might relate to American history standards. So Janet and I this summer sat with and conducted focus groups with middle and high school social studies teachers. And we went in because it was a professional development. And instead of talking at them, we said, hey, what do you need? What can we do to support you? And so we took inventory of the sorts of resources that would be helpful to them. We were mindful of the fact that we didn't want to create more work for teachers. I'm a former 7th grade teacher. And we were interested in what they needed to be able to do their job better. So this is where we see the project moving forward is really taking stock of what people actually need, what the district actually needs, and figuring out ways to create powerful sources that will target the standards and will also honor the local commitment and the commitment that LULAC has made to putting forward what I believe to be revolutionary in many ways lesson plans. Is there another slide?
No, that's
Sorry.
next slide's questions. Go ahead.
There we
Thank you.
Questions? Sorry.
No problem. We're good. Thank you.
Director Kleindro.
I'd also like to acknowledge the fact that you now are beginning to also work with the district on Black history lessons and eventually a book as well. And I observed one of those lessons and I was just blown away by how much the kids were into what had happened the day before and could tell us what had happened. And so I really appreciate all the time and effort you have put into both of these. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Director Beck.
I just want to say thank you. This is fantastic. And I think I really love the idea of tying it to local history, and the fact that you're working on another version, I think, is incredible. Just a question out there. So, like, I'm not from this area. And so when my kids get a lesson like this, how do they do the story planning or the storytelling if they're not, like, it's awesome to find out about what happened here. And because we have so many of our students whose families have been here for a long time, what about those kids whose families have not been here? Obviously, we're celebrating migration, but just out of curiosity, how do they participate in this, like, place-based learning the same way?
Yeah. You can. So I think what's really interesting about the lesson plan sequence is that it's not just like what was happening in Davenport. It's using Davenport as a lens to think about what was happening globally. So when you're thinking about migration from Mexico, for example, we bring in the Mexican Revolution as like a push factor. So it's not like, I understand what you're saying because I'm not from here. So it's not like if you don't know this street, you're not going to be able to identify with it. But what it really taps in students, I think, is we've all moved around. We've all been in communities. We've all made places. We all have cultural heritages, and that's a universal piece. So it is both place-based, but it's not contingent upon like knowing all of the details of a particular place, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah. I had the good fortune to observe a class where one of the lessons was being taught recently. And it was the teacher who was so good at making students who weren't from here, making every student feel like they had a connection. So she would ask them about, just like Deirdre said, had their family ever moved, even if it had just been moving within the community or moving from one state to another. So they were thinking about migration in lots of different ways and connecting it to what was in the book and in the lesson.
we use the monarch and that journey as the model.
Well, I was going to say,
And
as a
that,
biologist, that
yeah,
made me very, very happy to see. I feel like they don't get enough credit for the distance that they travel every year. So
So-
I can see a science lesson tying into, because there's the monarch tracking projects
ma'am.
in the area, and milkweed growing and things like that too. So thank you.
Yeah, I think there are actually a lot of opportunities for interdisciplinarity if you wanted to build it out. I mean,
Yeah.
really cool.
Student board members, you got any questions? Director Potts.
Primary source information is so electrifying when you use it. I taught social studies in Davenport, and I had the opportunity to get letters. One of the principals at Eisenhower Elementary School, son was in the Peace Corps, and this was in the 70s in the Congo. And I got 4 or 5 letters that he wrote home at different phases of his time there, and it was gold. I mean, you couldn't create things that were as poignant, especially when we're reading something about. Oh, they knew him; he was their principal, he was their kid. Primary sources. That's why we interview World War II veterans, to get their stories. And I read about Tyrannus, and I'm thinking, I was principal down at Smart, and there was a Tyrannus family down there, and I bet it's their relatives.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that not only is it fun for the teacher, but it sticks with kids. I mean, they can look at this, they can see this picture, they can see that girl standing there, and that's the river right behind. Oh, why is that Credit Island? Is that, I mean, it's wonderful stuff.
Thank you.
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you all for the awesome presentation. With us getting to sit in on the meetings, we get to do a little bit deeper dive. So
Right.
Thank you very much. I'm glad the book finally got done. We were waiting a while for that. So, and I'm glad to see it's expanding onto other things. And now I think if everybody would come up front here, we'll do a photo quick with you guys.
Oh, excellent. Oh, photo op. Okay.
Okay. All right.
The big guys got it. Right? Thank you. I have those every now and again. Just don't tell my wife. Thank you all once again for that presentation. I'm sure everyone came for the next presentation. Very riveting stuff. Subject 4.02, the fiscal year 2023 audit. I'll turn it over to Superintendent.
The Finance Committee last Thursday reviewed the district's audit, and so today we have Mia Frommel from Bonsack and Frommel with us today, along with Kevin and Lisa to do a 40,000-foot view of our audit and progress that has been made. Kevin?
You kind of took it all, but Mia's going to walk us through very briefly what the completion of the 23 audit. The audit committee has reviewed this last week with Mia, and she's going to go through this PowerPoint with you.
Thank you for being here. We know you had quite the journey to get here today.
Okay, that's a hard act to follow. So, I am here tonight to present the year-end financial information. And as has been mentioned, we met with the Finance Committee to vet through the information. And so I have summary comments for you tonight. I'm going to focus on the slide presentation. And the first slide gives you a summary of the bound financial document that's in front of you. And a few things to point out in how this is set up. The main sections are the introductory, financial, statistical, and compliance sections. The introductory section offers district highlights that's written by management and gives you an overview of some highlights of the year. The financial section is where you'll find the financial information, the footnotes. Of that area, the management's discussion and analysis, which is the MD&A, has summary information and compares it to prior years. So if you're pressed for time, that would be an area to spend some time in. And then the statistical section is a 10-year history of key financial information. That is always good to look and see where you've been and how far you've come. And then the compliance section focuses on the federal single audit. This next slide is a summary of the audit results from the 2023 year-end audit. And as I'm going through this, it may help you to go to page 115 of your bound document, which also is a summary. So first, we perform a financial statement audit, which is an audit of your financial statements. And the district received an unmodified opinion on that audit, which is a clean opinion. It's the highest level of opinion you can receive. So that's great news to report. And as I go through the next two types of audits, I wanted to clarify some audit terminology. Auditors refer to things as a material weakness or a significant deficiency. And a material, if you were to think of a barometer in front of you, a material weakness is more it's an 90 degree type day, something you really want to zone in on and address. The significant deficiency is going to be more in the 60s, 70s area, something that does need to be reported, but certainly doesn't rise to the level of risk of a material weakness. There is something that you might hear also called a control deficiency. That's something that is not required to be reported. That's more like in its 30s and 40s, something you just want to consider as you go forth, okay? So keep that in mind as we go through the government auditing standards audit and the federal single audit. The government auditing standards audit, we take a look at the internal controls over the district, which would be looking at how your receipts and your disbursements are processed and the controls around that. And then we also look at compliance with state laws and regulations. And the results of that audit are that you have a significant deficiency in internal control, and you have no material or significant items to report in compliance. And that is an improvement from what you have seen in the past. And that's why I wanted to point out on page 115 that you can see several areas, one of which was a material weakness, had been partially corrected and reduced down to a significant deficiency due to the additional internal controls the district had put in place. For the federal single audit, that's an audit of your most significant federal programs, federal grant programs. Your main programs are always going to be the Child Nutrition Program, the Title I program, the Special Education Program, but in recent years, you've also had the ESSER program, which has had quite an impact. And that is the program that was audited as your major program for fiscal year 2023. There was a significant deficiency reported and an instance of noncompliance reported, neither of which are considered at that material weakness level, but are at that more deficiency level that's needed to be in your document. The compliance finding over the ESSER program had to do with an over-allocation of indirect costs. So it's a computation at year end that is adjusted and corrected in the next fiscal year. So you'll see that corrected in fiscal year 2024. Are there any questions on those results?
Director Beck.
Just for those of us who are not in accounting, I know I ask the same question every year, but is this like common? Like if you took your average school district of a certain size, is there almost always going to be something like this, or is this unusual, or are we always just a work in progress? Like, how do we think about these kinds of things?
It is not uncommon to have findings in part of the audit process, particularly at the significant deficiency level. In terms of the federal single audit, it especially is not uncommon these days because of ESSER being so new and different from the routine programs that we have seen findings in those areas. The next slide is a comparison for governmental fund revenues. I just wanted to highlight some key changes between fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 22. Total revenues of your governmental funds increased 20.8 million, about 8%. That is largely in the intergovernmental column, which is to the far right. That is the impact of the ESSER funding. So the district did have 23.1 million in ESSER federal grant funding, which is what we were testing during the fiscal year. The other item to highlight is the other local column, which is in the middle. You'll see an increase of 5.1 million. That is interest rates. That is interest income. So rates at the end of fiscal year 22 were under 1%. They started to build at the beginning of the fiscal year 23. They were 2 to 5%, they were at 5% by the end of the year. And as a result, the district did receive 5.1 million in interest income. And the last slide is a comparison of expenditures. So total expenditures increased 15.6 million, or about 7%. One of the main reasons for that increase is in the capital outlay column, which is to the far right. That is the district's investment in construction or acquisition of buildings, equipment, land improvements, building improvements. There were several roof replacements at various buildings, the West Gym addition, and HVAC repairs and implementation that caused that increase. Most of the operating cost is going to be in instruction and support service functions, which are the first two columns. One thing I'd like to point out is that the largest expenditure of the district is payroll, wages, and benefits. And due to a reduction in full-time equivalents as a result of unfilled positions, payroll actually decreased approximately 3 million from the prior year. So the increase in expenditures occurred with the investment in capital outlay, but then with also the investment of your ESSER funding in non-payroll type items, which is going to be, for example, professional services had an increase of 2.2 million, most of that in curriculum and in mental health resource services. There was also an increase for instructional supplies, library books, textbooks, and tech services. In addition, the open enrollment cost increased 1.2 million, which is the tuition paid out for open enrolled students. That increase is a result of increases of the state tuition rate. So payroll goes down, but the other items, there's just seen a swing in the type of expenditures causing those increases. That is my summary, but I'm happy to take any additional questions.
Director Poston.
I appreciate you being here again, and I appreciate you going through it with us in the Finance Committee. If I'd like the board to note on page 115, all the items that under the status column that have been corrected. You know, a couple that are partially corrected. So kudos to Kevin and Lisa and your staff for your hard work on getting these changes made. And you assured me that you'll continue to work on these when we talked about this at Finance Committee with Karen and myself. So again, thanks for the hard work that you put into this, and appreciate the good report.
Thank you for the report. Looks like you knocked it out of the park.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
All right, we'll move on to student board reports. Who wants to start first tonight?
Good evening. I'd like to talk about West High School is doing this Cinderella as their musical this year. They'll be performing April 26th through the 28th, and they are very excited, and choreo for their performance has started this week, so they're very excited about that. The yearbook team at our West High School has been working very hard to hit deadline. Their deadline is tomorrow, and they have I've seen them all firsthand really buckle down recently to really put out an amazing product for our school. The spring sports have officially started meets. Almost all sports have started meets or games, or will be having their first one within the next week. And we have finals this week. Yay! So finals are tomorrow and Wednesday, and so students have been studying very hard for those. And our new term starts Thursday, so we're all very excited to start our last chunk of the school year, and summer's closer. Thank you, guys.
Hello from Central. Firstly, on March 17th to the 19th, 3 awesome and courageous students attended the FCCLA State Leadership Conference in Cedar Rapids. And they came out with the Silver Honor Chapter Award, which is pretty cool in my opinion. I don't really know much about it, but I know it's really cool. Secondly, to piggyback off of my sweet friend, C-term is tomorrow, and we need all the luck we can, so take a little moment for us. Thirdly, Central's Got Talent. What is it, right? Well, I know what it is. You guys don't. It is a variety show that is held on May 2nd, where students from 9th grade to 12th grade, of course, can show off their talents individually or with the group they want and have an awesome time, lots of laughing and giggles. And I am foreshadowing lots of gymnastics and a lot of stand-up comedy. Finally, prom. Exciting, right? Our last prom. It's going to be on April 27th, and the theme that the senior class officer decided was something that every kid at Central, and I'm sure North and all the other schools know it too. They read about it either in middle school or high school. It's going to be the Great Gatsby, and things such as gold and black, sparkling ties and dresses, along with feathers, lots of feathers, are all in the theme. And we haven't announced it at Central just yet, so I'm excited to see who is watching the stream and come up and ask, is it really the Great Gatsby? I don't see a lot of them coming up and asking me that, but promise. Thank you guys. Here you go.
Okay, so I apologize in advance because I don't have that level of charisma, but I will try and match it. So anyways, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ethan Cepeda, the student board representative from North High School. I would like to start off this report by reiterating that because of the high amount of snow days that occurred earlier this year, next Monday, April 1st, originally denominated as Spring Break number 2, will now be a school day to accommodate for the lost days, and I promise that that is not an April Fool's joke. In other news, the drama department, also known as Wildcat Productions, are prepping for their spring musical, Something Rotten. To quickly note, the musical is rated as PG-13 to anyone who might care about the parental guidelines of the show. Tickets are currently being sold at dnhs.booktix.net, and the prices range from $10 to $12 based on the seat. With summer coming closer as time passes, North kindly invites every senior to send in their kindergarten pictures for the traditional graduation slideshow that plays each year at the ceremony. If you're interested in participating in this slideshow or know someone who is, there is not a better time to submit your kindergarten pictures than right now, as soon it will be May, and the line to submit these pictures might become a little bit busier. Speaking of the summer, if you or anyone you know has a student who is interested in becoming a healthcare professional, look no further for a great workplace experience than the Trinity Healthcare Experience happening this summer. At this event, which takes place from July 22nd to July 26th, students can expect to communicate with many different healthcare professionals, shadow professionals on their day-to-day tasks, and be exposed to the skills and work required to be a proficient healthcare employee. Meaning students will get a pertinent experience to help them decide what kind of healthcare service they will pursue, or if they would like to even pursue one at all. The only 2 requirements for this event is you must be 16 years old by July 22nd, 2024, and pay the $30 fee required to participate. To apply, you can find a flyer on North's eBlast that will help with further application processes. In the athletic department, there are 2 important clinics and tryouts coming soon for student athletes. These are the clinics and tryouts of both the dance and cheer teams available for future freshmen through to seniors in the 2024 to 2025 academic year. The cheer clinic will be on Tuesday, April 9th from 4:30 to 9 p.m., with the tryouts being on Friday, April 12th at 4:30. It should also be mentioned that cheerleaders will need 3 references from people who are not family or friends. The dance clinic will be on March 27th, March 28th, and March 29th from 5 to 7 to learn the dances and tryouts. Tryouts will be on Friday, April 5th, beginning at 5:30 p.m. until everyone has tried out. It's not a requirement to go at either of the clinics, but it is highly recommended for anyone trying out. Forms to sign up for any of the mentioned clinics and tryouts are linked on the eBlast. Now, shifting my intention to North's fundraisers, North would like to thank everyone who participated in and donated in our Rock and Roll Bingo fundraiser, as over $8,000 were raised in support of our athletic teams. As I mentioned at a previous meeting, North and Central are over halfway through our fundraising goal for the upcoming prom after party at the TBK Bank Sports Complex, and are looking for any more additional opportunities to raise some funds for this cause. Specifically, any businesses that might be interested in partnering with us. So if you or someone you know is interested in negotiating a fundraiser for this cause, a donation letter to show your interest can be found linked on our online newsletter. And just to quickly share some events happening at Harrison Elementary. Harrison's next fundraiser in their Dine to Donate series will be at Your Pie on March 26th from 4 to 9:30 p.m. 10% of all sales during this time will come back to support Harrison. Additionally, their penny wars are back in action from April 1st to April 15th. Here, all students can use any of their spare change or money to vote for which staff member they would like to see receive a pie to the face. All the money will go towards funding the 5th and 6th graders' end of the year field trip. And that's all the information I was able to compile. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you all for the very detailed reports. We appreciate it. All right, are there any board reports? Director Hayes.
The board would like to offer our sincere condolence to our previous director, Jamie Snyder, who lost his father on Saturday.
Are there any other board reports? Director Posture.
Since our last meeting, I was able to visit McKinley, Garfield, and Jefferson's elementaries. Well, I want to thank Principal Schultz and staff at Jefferson, Principal Evans and staff at Garfield, Principal Vincent and staff at McKinley. I appreciate allowing me to step into your classrooms and able to observe some of our new curriculum.
Any other board reports? Actually, earlier today in this room, I was able to attend the Davenport Schools Museum board meeting because apparently the board president's on that board, and I've never known about it in 4 years. So now I know. And then also, I do want to plug this on Wednesday night at 4:30. We have art in City Hall. And then they will recognize the students at the meeting at 5:30, I think is when it is. So always a great turnout. We do way better than any of the surrounding cities. You heard it here first. Any other board reports? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Communications. Brenda, do we have anything on open forum? No. All right, I don't get to read that tonight. Move on to consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Motion's been moved and second. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Superintendent report.
None at this time.
Committee reports. Let's see. Breaking Barriers Committee.
Breaking Barriers will have our first official meeting on Wednesday, the 27th, at 11 a.m.
Okay. Thank you. Elziak.
Sorry, we did not meet. Our next meeting is in May.
Okay. Policy Committee.
Nope.
All right, long-range facilities planning. We're going to have a discussion later. Director Potts wasn't able to be at our last meeting. And we'll go over what we kind of discussed at that meeting. Legislative advocacy, not too much new to report there unless you have anything.
The SSA went back to the House, and so it went. They negotiated to the 2.5 that the Senate was proposing. So I was disappointed in that. But and then the teacher pay and the AAA bills are moving forward.
Thank you. Finance Committee.
We met last Thursday, spent some time reviewing the audit, and I think Kevin is going to present on the January key measures and monthly fund report.
Mr. Post County, please take over.
Okay. 10.02, we're going to start with a monthly fund report. This will be brief because we already have February's queued up, but I need to spend a little more time, so I give you a little bit more in-depth report for February, get another month under our belt. But this shows you that federal revenue that Mia was talking about too from last year, that it's all those ESSER funds. There's a balloon in there of $31 million, almost 4 times what we had from the prior year. You'll see our surplus. Because of that, it's running over $26 million for year-to-date expenditures versus revenue. The state's done a much better job at keeping up with our quarterly ESSER claims than they did last year. If you remember last year, I was making mention that they're behind by 2 quarters of paying us our ESSER funds. Well, this is what's showing from a year-to-date in February. So you're seeing that the state has caught up on that. The part I wanted to focus more on, we seem to focus on the general fund the most, but I keep saying we're going to be turning our focus onto sales tax, PEPAL fund, as well as our other fund 30, which is our capital projects fund. When we finish the loan that we're going to be finishing tonight, you'll see that we're spending some sales tax funds, more so than in the past years. And when you flip to page 2, you'll see also we're doing some projects in the PEPAL fund. You'll see that the surplus, there's a deficit for the year, but remember we have $14 million in that account even after that. So there's been some collections over time. So we're doing a much better job of our spend and getting all of our projects going. That fund 30, like I said, is our capital projects fund. When that will turn to positive in April, when we receive our proceeds from the debt that we're working on tonight. I just want to make note of the other funds. That's our before and after school fund. That's just a timing issue with some revenue. There's some federal revenue coming in that will cover that, but that will be positive before the year end. That's very brief, but that's where we are with the monthly fund report. If there's any questions, otherwise I'll flip to the key measures. Okay, on the key measures report, a lot of this we're going to be focusing on in 2 weeks from tonight because we'll be working on our FY25 budget. You'll see that our budgeted fund balance was to be at about budgeted UAB was to be about 11.4%, and it's showing it's projected at 17.2. I don't expect it to grow that high. When I saw February's report, it was a little bit less than that 17. We'll get more into that later, but a lot of that is due to our vacancies and some of our timing of our expenditures. And you'll see when you get to our spending, you see that we projected spending 99.8% of our budget. That's the leveling of trying to spend the dollars that we're allowed to spend. We're well under that on our spend. Timing issues, vacancies, again, are there. I expect us to be higher than that come year end, but it is taking a dip, but it'll come back up. Also, when you see our solvency, that's a direct reflection of why we're spending only 92% of our budget right now. You'll see that our solvency is climbing. One of the things you're going to see on our budget in 2 weeks is our cash reserve. We won't be cash reserving. I keep telling you this is going to self-correct itself in FY25. We're going to have that conversation in 2 weeks from tonight. So you can see that 20% is the max that the state likes to see school districts at. We're going to be going over that, but come 25, we'll start to dial that back in and be a little bit less. I don't have anything highlighted on page 2, but I do want to mention that we will, once I get the budget complete and our estimates finished up for this year, we'll be looking at if we have to do an amendment for our current budget. That's where those negatives are on that bottom page. I don't believe those are accurate right now. That's just the model forecasting that, but I'll be working on where we're going to go from now to the end of the year of what we actually spend. So we may be coming back with a budget amendment in March. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Kevin? All right, knocked it out of the park. Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break before we go into items requiring action. All right, we'll start back up with items requiring action. May I have a motion on subject 11.01?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the resolution appointing paying agent, bond registrar, and transfer agent, approving the paying agent, bond registrar, and transfer agent agreement, and authorizing the execution of same.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing, hearing none, I'm going to call for the vote. This will be a roll call vote. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Barnes.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.02?
Mr. President,
Director Poston.
move the board approve that form of tax exemption certificate be placed on file and approved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Again, this will be a roll call vote. Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Barnes.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.03?
Mr. President,
Director Poston.
move the board approve that the form of continuing disclosure certificate be placed on file and approved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote again. Another roll call vote. Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Barnes.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.04?
Mr. President,
Director Poston.
move the board approve the resolution authorizing and providing for the terms of issuance and securing the payment of $75,900,000 school infrastructure sales, services, and use tax revenue bonds, Series 2024 of the Davenport Community School District, State of Iowa, under the provisions of Chapter 423F of the Code of Iowa, and providing for a method of payment of said bonds.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote again. Another roll call vote. Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Barnes.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.05? Director Beck.
I move the board award the Central High School Cafe roofing improvements bid to the lowest responsive bidder, Bill Bruce Builders, in the amount of $1,450,000.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I just have one quick question. Are these guys going to be able to get this done? Because they've been bidding a lot of work around the area, and I don't think they're that big of a company.
We hope so. I mean, they said they could.
Because I
So
think they're doing the Pleasant Valley project too.
I don't know all the projects they have going on, but they do have a lot going on. I agree.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure they'd be able to get it done in the time frame.
When we met with them, they said they would get it tackled. So my assumption at this point is they will.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That'll be me. Ayes have it. Motion carries. All right. May I have a motion on subject 11.06?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board award the bid for call wall replacement at Harrison, Walcott, and Wood to the lowest responsive bidder.
Coming in hot. Oh, everybody's got their microphones on.
in the amount of $356,964.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.07?
Mr. President,
Director Klein Jerome.
I move the board approve the purchase of curriculum resources from SAVAS, SAVVAS, for grades 6, 7, and 8 social studies in the amount of $381,815 using ESSER funds.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Director Beck.
Is this the same curriculum that was pulled from our agenda 2 weeks ago? Okay. So was the decision made to go ahead with it no matter?
Yes, that legislation did not make it through the funnel, and so any of the changes are on there. But there was a very extensive crosswalk of what was in there. One of the biggest pieces was adding a civics class, but the rest of what was in there were pieces that we could address within the curriculum resource that is being purchased, if it were to go through,
Okay.
which it didn't go through. So
Okay.
we're okay either way.
I would just like to state that, in my personal opinion, the curriculum department's job is to come up with curriculum, not the legislature. So
Correct.
I would have voted for it no matter what.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.08?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the tentative agreement reached with maintenance and ratified by the unit for the wage reopener for July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025 of the collective bargaining agreement in effect through June 30th, 2028.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.09?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the tentative agreement reached with AFSCME Food and Nutrition Services and ratified by the unit for the wage reopener for July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025 of the collective bargaining agreement in effect through June 30th, 2025.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Quick question.
Director Beck.
Is that date correct, in effect through June 30th of 2025? Because the other ones say June 2028.
Maintenance was on a different.
Okay, just
Third-
wanted to make sure.
Correct.
Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.10?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the tentative agreement reached with AFSCME secretaries and ratified by the unit for the wage reopener for July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025 of the collective bargaining agreement in effect through June 30th, 2025.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.11?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the tentative agreement reached with AFSCME paraeducators and ratified by the unit for the wage reopener for July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025 of the collective bargaining agreement in effect through June 30th, 2025.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.12?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the tentative agreement reached with ASME Custodians Warehouse Security and ratified by the union for the wage reopener for 7/1/24 through 6/30/25 of the collective bargaining agreement in effect through 6/30/25.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on 11.13?
Mr. President,
Director Klein Jerome.
I move the board approve the tentative agreement reached with the Davenport Education Association and ratified by the unit for the wage reopener for 7/1/24 to 6/30/25 of the collective bargaining agreement in effect through 6/30/25.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I was just wondering if you were sleeping. All right, seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.14?
Mr. President,
Director Klein Jerome.
I move the board approve the total package increase of 3.4% for the non-bargaining group as previously discussed for the 24-25 fiscal year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.15?
Mr. President,
Director Klein Jerome.
I move the board approve a total package increase of 3.4% for the administrators group as previously discussed for the 24-25 fiscal year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.16?
Mr. President,
Director Klein Jerome.
I move the board approve the total package increase of 3.4% for the cabinet administrators group as previously discussed for the 24-25 fiscal year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
What happened?
Motion's
Second.
been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.17?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
we'll move the board authorize the superintendent to award the contract for uninterruptible power sources to the successful vendor in an amount not to exceed $200,000.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.18?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the purchase and replacement of network switches, including cabling rework, in the amount of $308,792 from Aircore Inc.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.19?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the maintenance renewal with Aircore Fortinet for fiscal year 2024-25 for $115,349.82.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.20?
Mr. President,
Madam Vice President.
I move the board approve the policies listed below. Policies under 5-year review are 209.07, 210.01, 210.02, 210.03, 210.04, 210.06, 210.07, and 210.09. And then the policies for annual review, 503.03, 505.08, 506.02, 507.03, 507.04, 600, 601.02, 605.04, 606, 606.01, 606.06, 707.05, 710.01, 710.02, 804.02, and 804.04.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I kind of want you to read those again.
Sure. I would like to say that some of these, well, obviously they're going to come up every year. We're trying to get on a 5-year cycle, but some of them we're required to do annually. There are also some of these that, when it talks about class size, it talks about the superintendent will bring it to us, or when it talks about student lunch fees, they just bring it to the board. So there will be further information coming, and we're trying to pull those out so that we bring them to you all at once.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Wow, we powered through those. Way to go. All right, we'll move on to discussion items. The first subject for discussion is 12.01, replacement of the West High Science Wing rooftop unit. I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent, and I know where he's going.
This rooftop unit had a little electrical problem a while back, and we temporarily have it up and running and partially fixed. But being the age of the unit, we decided we'd like to replace it in its entirety. It wasn't a unit we were replacing within the ESSER-funded project, so this is just really a replacement of a unit that's failed electronically. It had a little fire in it, and some parts melted. So we're looking to purchase this through Train, potentially through the Omnia contract, as soon as we can. Any questions?
Director Klein-Jerome.
When will this work be done, and will it, like, during the school year, so they'll be without this during the school year, or can we get it done over the summer?
There may be a short period of time where it's down, but the majority of the time it's functioning right now temporarily, not working perfect, but it'd probably be about late fall when we got it. So there might be a couple of days while they're doing the install where these rooms could be a little bit more uncomfortable than usual.
So we'll just open the windows, right?
Yeah, fans, air conditioning units if we need to. Hopefully it's not 100 degrees.
Any other discussion on this or information? Director Beck.
Is a 5-year warranty pretty standard?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like these things are supposed to last on our buildings for 20-something years.
Yeah, they last 25 years, and you can extend the warranty as long as you want. It just kind of seems to extend the price also a little bit.
Yeah.
So 5 is a pretty standard.
Okay.
Any other discussion or information board members would need before this comes to us at our next regular meeting as an item requiring action? We need extended warranties, Josh. We need to really push that.
Start negotiating that.
There you go. I like that. Because it was probably a manufacturer defect on why it caught on fire. Seeing and hearing nothing else, we will move on to subject 12.02, long-range facilities plan discussion. So I will lead this. During our last long-range facilities plan meeting, we are having the conversation because we are painting the elementary schools right now and doing the color schemes. That's something that we said we were going to do during the long-range plan. And as we were talking about the school being regionalized, you'll have your north region, your central region, and your west region on maybe aligning those colors and things. So say you're in the west region, you're red and white are your colors. You're in the north region, you're blue and gold. You're in the central region, you're blue and red. So that way, when you go to this elementary, you know you're a future Wildcat, you're a future Falcon, or you're a future Central Blue Devil. See how I worded that one a little differently there? Basically, as we've been talking, and if I missed anything, Director Posham, feel free to chime in, but as we were talking with the discussion on that, that would be a way to gravitate more families towards it, because that way, if you look at any of our surrounding districts, no matter what school you go to, you know you're going to be a Spartan, you're going to be a Lancer, you're going to be a Bulldog or whatever. We have so many different things. I remember when I went to Fillmore, it was, I don't remember if it was Rockets, Flyers, or whatever. And then when you go to Wood, you're a Viking, and then so on and so forth. So that was one of the things we had a lot of discussion on, if that would help with the recruitment and retention of folks. So that's kind of a brief overview. I can definitely give you any more information you want, but just to kind of kick off the conversation to see what the thoughts are from the board members, so that we are able to have a discussion, so the administration and the long range facilities plan committee knows like what avenue and what direction to go. Director Beck.
Just off the top of my head, in theory, it's a good idea, but it's my understanding that the logo represents the colors of all the schools in our district. And I think I like that color scheme of the logo because it does capture all the schools in our district, right? And nobody's got more color than anybody else. I also wonder if, I mean, part of the reason neighboring districts, students always know what they're going to be is because there's only like one junior high and one high school. So you only got one place to go. We have the luxury of having multiple options. And at this point, students can pick which high school they go to. So I worry about, ingraining future Falcon, and then somebody decides they want to do the accelerated AA degree at North, right? And then now they're going to be something else. It's probably not a big deal, but the other thing that kind of hits me is if we ever need to adjust these regions, we're going to have to readjust color schemes and things, and I'd hate to see us painted into a corner there, right? Like the high schools have their colors and those aren't changing. But if for some reason we decided that, one of our schools was going to have a different alignment, would we need to, like one elementary school, would we need to then repaint to bring it up to speed? And that seems like an unnecessary thing that we would need to do. I guess just sort of my thoughts off the top of my head. I understand the idea of like brand loyalty, but on the other hand, I also like to celebrate the fact that we have the diversity and we have so many different options in our district. So I don't know what the statistics are on recruitment and retention in terms of the feeder system, so.
Real quick, I just want to, in no way, shape, or form, so you all know this right out of the gate, did we ever talk about changing that logo or anything like that? I just want to, that was never even part of the discussion. We were just talking about.
No, I wasn't implying that. I was just saying, like, the reason the logo has all those colors is because all of those colors are represented by all of our schools, right? Like every school in our district has one of those colors at least. And so if we go to a unified system of just the high school colors, that no longer has the meaning to me. That may lose some of that meaning. I don't think I'm sorry. I didn't mean to imply that anybody was talking about changing the logo at all. No. Okay.
I just didn't want that to be on the
Yeah.
front page of the fold tomorrow. Did you want to add something? Oh, that was what you wanted to add? Director Barnes.
In principle, I love it, but I'm having a really difficult time imagining a blue and red Sudlow Tiger. And so there's some brand loyalty there as well, that I don't think we want to overlook. The other thing is, I wonder if we're a little late to this discussion, given the fact that we're investing a lot in the elementary schools already in FF&E, and whether or not that's been a part of the discussion, or we have to wait another 5 to 7 years to go in and replace. Because sometimes what happens in these situations is we rely on the architect and the contractor who they hire to tell us what colors are contemporary. I look at this carpet here, right? I mean, I'm going to guess that the superintendent didn't pick this carpet without a little bit of guidance and direction from the vendor. So anyway, just again, in principle, I like it, but I also think there are some obstacles there.
Those are excellent points, and this is where we are right now with that. So we're not far enough down the road where we can't pivot with our elementary schools. The fact that we're doing a couple of them every year, we would have to make some adjustments there. And you're absolutely right. That's what makes this conversation so difficult, is that right now our architects are getting ready to prepare the bids for August. And so over the next couple of months, that's when the color schemes are going to be infused inside of there. So you're exactly right.
Director Potts.
I'm having a hard time visualizing what this is supposed to look like. I'm getting the idea that the premise is that if we put blue and red stripes at Sudlow, then those kids will know, oh, I'm supposed to go to Central. I can assure you, the kids at Sudlow know they're supposed to go to Central. They've always known they're supposed to go to Central. The kids when I was at Frank L. Smart, the kids at Frank L. Smart, Golden Eagles, knew they were going to West. The kids know that. If we have difficulties in supplying certain students for certain programs at the high school, my suggestion would be, and this is an age-old suggestion, that high school coaches and high school sponsors of extracurricular activities spend some time in their feeder junior highs talking to those kids, those coaches talking to those kids that are playing football, so that they'll go to that school. We're not going to change the fact that we have open enrollment, that a kid can go to any high school he wants. So to me, the idea that junior high school kids, middle school kids need to feel a sense of identity, of belonging at their school. When they bond with that school, when they feel a connection with that school, behaviors improve, vandalism goes down, the entire school climate is much better, way better. It's measurable, okay? And part of that is their need to identify as a golden eagle at Smart, or a Viking, or a bee, or a panther, or a tiger. And that's what makes them feel connected. They're not going to feel connected if their identity is, I'm gonna be a devil. I'm gonna be a wildcat. Junior high school kids don't think long range. You're talking to most junior high school kids about the future. You're talking about high school, they're thinking Saturday. That's where they are. Our junior highs are built around, and with the middle school concept, we're enhancing that ability to have those kids have a connection. But they're still not going to be motivated because they're a 6'1" and there's a 6'2", two houses. They're going to be Sudlow Tigers. They're going to be Golden Eagles. The logos are important. There's a lot of invested. You walk into the Sudlow gym, what do you got you got a big tiger. There's two tigers. Okay? It's the Sudlow Band is called the Orange Crush. Not coincidentally, because of the school colors. You know? You have a variety of logos. You have a clothing. You have families that identify with that. And I personally just don't buy the premise that the colors you paint are going to make them go to that school. They already know where they're going to go. Because their brothers went there, or their parents went there, or their neighbors went there. They have fight songs. The junior highs all have fight songs that are tied to who they are, their identity. I just don't think we enhance the student's experience by taking those things away. I jokingly, when we had this conversation, came up with it. I said, "Oh, joking, oh yeah, so we'll be calling the Sudlow kids the Little Devils." Not a good man now. I'm going to put John on the spot. John, when you went to Frank L. Smart in 7th grade, did you know what high school you were going to go to?
I might be an anomaly. I knew what high school I was going to when I was 3 years old, Mr. Potts, but some extenuating circumstances in the Flynn family tree.
This is true. Your dad was there, yeah. But, so I mean, I think this is. I don't know what study has been done or what research has been done that says this will do it, because I don't think it will. I think it's somebody had an idea. Oh yeah, let's do that, and not fully appreciating the potential negative impact it may have on junior high school kids. And I don't, and I just think that's what our primary concern should be.
Director Poston.
Well, as Dan said earlier, we had this discussion at the Long Range Planning Committee meeting, and I like the idea, from the standpoint is that we need to have some consolidation as far as team pride. I like the idea of working through from the elementary to the junior high to the high school. We've got to get more participation from our kids, whether it's sports, band, chorus, whatever. And I think there has to be an emphasis placed on our coaches that we're going to work down the line to these lower, to elementary and to the junior high. But the reason that the discussion is taking place now is because of all the changes that we are making in the buildings. Keep in mind there's 3 less buildings than what we had when this was originally the logo was originally made up, and of course, like we said, there's going to be no changes made to that. I guess I would like to put John Flynn on the spot again. And since you've been so involved in the Davenport School District and you've been involved in all levels, whether it's coaching, administration, what would be your thoughts on this proposal?
While I don't disagree with anything that Director Potts said earlier, I don't know that we know the impact that this might have on building that brand, that connection from the lower levels to the high school level. President Gosa said it at the very beginning. You go to surrounding places that are only one school towns, and those kids identify with that logo, with that piece, with the colors from day one. I don't think we know if there would or wouldn't be a correlation, but I don't think we've ever really tried it, and I think it's worth considering in terms of building that brand and really ingraining that feeling of I belong to this region for each of our students.
Well, thank you for your comments, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I surely wanted your perspective. The other thing that comes to mind too, we have combined teams throughout the district. We've had combined wrestling teams from all three high schools, correct? Am I correct on that, right? And so we do have some crossover even, between our high schools. I don't know how that, would affect this or not.
Director Kleindro.
Okay, so let's say Williams Hornets, and I don't even know, maybe they're not the Hornets anymore. That was a long time ago. But so let's say under this scheme, would they still be the Williams Hornets, only with a red and white scheme? Or are we telling them they have to change their mascot too? Because this just says color.
Yeah, right now we're only discussing color.
Okay. So then if they are going to be the red and white of West, what actually gets painted in that building red and white? I taught when all the lockers were tan, there was no color, but now I go in buildings, I'm like, wow, you got blue lockers or yellow lockers. So what exactly is going to be painted? You're not going to paint a whole room red or.
So that's why we're bringing this here, because the architects are stuck. So they'll bring us a palette of colors that match that. And so the architects and the designs that mix with your natural colors of your brick and the aesthetics of the rest of the building, the flooring. And so you're exactly right. You wouldn't paint a building red all everywhere, but that you would then begin to build your accent colors that way, and then you would have a palette of colors that you would be working from. That makes sense.
Okay, so we're only talking about colors. We're not talking about the whole thing being, it might be a stripe or two or something, and we're not talking about changing a mascot at this point.
Not at this point.
Okay.
Director Hayes.
This has turned into an ordeal. I totally understand what's the concept, what you're trying to work through, but maybe say like in the library, put those colors in the library and that's it. Or possibly at the schools offer various swag, whatever your high school would be, offer that swag available in the elementary school or middle school levels. So if you're going to Central, you could purchase that. If they're in North region, they can purchase North swag, maybe Junior Wildcats or something that they can still identify with who they are without, painting a lot in the schools. Because I feel the paint is something that's going to come and go. We do have the emblem here where all the colors are included. And I feel that's kind of more unified within the district. And we do have the open enrollment where they can go wherever they want to be. Just because I'm in Sudlow, I may not necessarily want to go to Central. I may want to get in the dual program, but having this, the majority more than likely will go to Central. But I think it still identifies for various students to have their own identity to do what they want to do. But if that swag is, offered, they can still get what they want and still represent who they want to be.
Director Potts.
I agree with Kent when he says we need more participation at the high schools and in all the activities. But the motivation for that is relationships. It's the relationship that the high school people and the junior high school people in those areas develop. Okay, the Central Show Choir came to Sudlow every year and put on a show. Well, all of a sudden, every eighth grader in the building was going out for show choir, because they saw it, they experienced it, they developed a connection, and that's what motivates junior high school kids. They want to be connected, and they need a relationship. Relationships are everything with junior high school kids, and you know the. I mean, if you want to go to Sudlow and you want to keep the Sudlow Tigers and do that, and then you want to put a blue and red stripe around the stairway, or even put up paint a Blue Devil somewhere, that's fine. But it's the Sudlow Tigers, and it's Halloween colors, which are hard to match, and nothing rhymes with orange.
Director Beck.
Orange happens to be my favorite color. Um, so I think, I guess I'm thinking about our responsibility to provide our students with the best experience possible. And I think in terms of growing that school pride and that getting that engagement, I agree with Director Potts. It's about the relationships, not necessarily about the school colors. And I really do put a lot of stock in the meaning of our district logo and the fact that it does represent every school, and every school can have its own identity within the whole. And I guess I agree. Like, I feel like the elementary schools, I don't know if all the high schools do it, but you know, high school groups go to the middle school or they go to the elementary school, and all those kids all of a sudden want to do whatever that activity was that they, you know, had an opportunity to see, right? McKinley's been hosting the Central Homecoming Parade for the last couple of years. Last while. Those kids know they're going to be Blue Devils, most likely, you know, but they're going to be Sudlow Tigers first, and they participate in that homecoming parade as well. I don't know what other schools do something like that, right? So they're still trying to build those relationships, but they're also embracing the fact that each school has its own little personality. And I also think, just from a financial perspective, the investment we would have to make, particularly in going from something like the orange and black of Sudlow to the blue and red of Central, that we would be spending a lot of money on things like uniforms and, you know, gym paint and merchandise that is not something that's necessarily going to help our students. And I think we should emphasize the relationships, coaches working with students in that middle school level or the elementary school level. The kids who are in orchestra in elementary school, they see the same teacher in junior high who also helps with the freshman orchestra, right? And so kids are more likely to stay with it. It's those relationships, I think, that are more important. And I agree that there is something to be said for the brand loyalty that we've already built at all of our schools. And you know, a good compromise might be put a little Blue Devil, you know, on the Tiger's collar or something, like, you know, put something there, but I think everybody knows where they're planning to go. And I guess I disagree with the idea that because other districts are doing something, we should do it too. We're different, we're not the same, we're bigger, and we aren't a one-school town, and so we should celebrate that. I would also like to see some research or evidence that shows that changing the school colors in this way, making an investment like this in the physical environment, would actually make a difference at the junior high level or the elementary school level. And at the moment, Mr. Potts has way more experience at that level than I do. So I trust his observations because I don't see any research on it.
Director Kleindrop.
The one comment I'd like to make is this really isn't going to cost us anymore because we're on a mission to go out and paint all the buildings over a period of time. We're building a new Sudlow and a new Smart. So now is the time, if we're going to do this, we need to, and it's not costing us anymore to change the interior colors. because you're doing 3 elementaries a year or 4 or whatever. It's not going to all happen at once. It's going to be phased in as we go. So money-wise, I don't see that as an issue, but the identity, the logo, to get rid of, whatever you are, that's a different thing to me than color.
But aren't we going to have to spend money on new uniforms at the junior high level if we change the colors, even if we don't change the mascot? I mean, eventually everybody needs new uniforms, but. Yeah, I know. I'm not saying we don't need new jerseys, but there are a lot of things out there with logos on them already. And is it worth extra money to make those changes if they're not directly impacting students, is what I'm trying to say.
Anyone have anything else? All right, I will chime in as a current parent, and I've been involved in the feeder program, everything like that. Our oldest graduate, all know that. The only stuff we've ever bought in our household has been the high school stuff, and they do offer that through the feeder programs and stuff like that. Now, being the president of a Little League who just recently absorbed West Emi's Little League, who feeds into West, that's all those kids wear too. I've never seen a kid wear their elementary stuff or junior high stuff, and I'm not saying anything by that. I still have basketball sweatshirts from 10, 12 years ago because we knew that was where it was going to go, and it was just an easier thing for us. Now, I can say personally for my son, when they got to junior high, it was a completely different experience, and that's why we didn't have as many kids that came out for sports and things like that, because of that person who is no longer there was a huge factor in that. I think in all of the families we've ever ran around with and things, that feeder part is a integral part to get people locked in. That goes the same for my daughter's drama stuff, and my kids always did the cheer clinics and things like that. It was that sense of they knew who their friends were coming up and things like that. You build that camaraderie with the families and things like that. So that was just mainly kind of the intent on it, because, we have to do something. What worked 20 years ago or whatever doesn't work anymore. We have to start thinking outside of the box. We've done a lot of new things in this district. People weren't a fan of the reorganization, but you know what? It's worked out pretty good. Sometimes we do have to get out of our comfort zone and try new things, because if we don't, we're just going to get left behind. It's going to happen. It's happening right now. When we do these schools, we're going to have the latest and greatest. You don't think that upsets our competition, and they're going to try to step it up too? We have a lot more area, a lot more buildings and things like that we have to start doing things like that. So, it's been a great discussion, but just as a perspective from someone who is actually and currently a parent in the district and has been there for years, I can see that. And I understand, everyone has their apprehensions. They're tied to this school, that school, or whatever, and everyone's afraid to try new things. This has been a great discussion. I appreciate everybody's feedback on that. It's something we can go back and talk more. I know we talked quite a bit at the last long-range meeting on this, and that's kind of why, the long-range facilities plan just serves at the pleasure of the board, right? They just work with the board. The board's the one that makes the end-all, be-all decisions and things like that. But I do support doing something along these lines, obviously, if I haven't made that clear. I do think it's time to step out of our comfort zone and start doing some things. We all sit here and talk about we got to recruit, keep people in our district and things like that. Well, we got to be willing to do the hard things to do stuff like that. Director Beck.
With all due respect, I am also a current parent in the district. And in my observation, and we have another current parent, Director Barnes, I have a slightly different experience. My kids aren't necessarily wearing high school gear, but the high school teams come to them all the time. They know where they're going. It has nothing to do with what their elementary school mascot is. I do agree that we need to do something different. I'm not averse to that. But everything that everybody has said has boiled down to relationships. You meet the families, you meet the coaches, you meet them, you meet the coaches, you encourage those relationships at elementary school level, at junior high level. Everything everybody has said has boiled down to building relationships, not color palettes or mascots. And that, to me, if it is something that is this different, such a significant investment, yes, we need new jerseys, but it's a big change. And I think if the issue is really relationships, then let's invest in that.
Superintendent.
So I think it's really important to say that our coaches and our staff work really hard to go out into those buildings. So to assume that they're not doing those things, if you want to see wonderful examples of that, watch what just occurred down at the Adler, where all of our kids get to watch that showcase. That is occurring. We can always improve on our feeder systems. I want to separate the relational conversation from this because we know that a good feeder system, a good feeder structure is built on the way that our coaches, the way that our teachers, the way that our staff, the way that our instructors, band, orchestra, all those things go down and interact. Look at the band extravaganza when the field is completely full with the upcoming students. So our faculty are doing that. The question at hand here is the potential of continuing with our. This is not going to change. This color, this diversity represents who we are. And there's been wonderful points brought out. The question that matter is, what does it look like to have a unified region moving forward? If colors don't matter, change the colors. If they matter, keep them the same. So do we want to have a unified region that all turn into Falcons? Or do we want to keep our diversity? And we're at a spot right now where our diversity in colors, our color schemes. And so I see the benefit of both of them. The notion that all of our colors are rowing in the same direction, so to speak, could be a pretty potentially powerful thing, even if you started at the high schools and middle schools. It gets problematic when you think about that logo, but people have worked through that many a times. There are blue and red tigers out in the wild, I believe. There's no blue panthers out in the wild, but Walcott still seem to exist. So just that notion, that's where we are. And you can see the benefits for both of them. We just want to make sure that that's the direction that we go. As somebody that's been a principal in one of our feeder systems, when your colors don't match your high school, it does make it a little bit more difficult. And you're right, 100%. It's about the relationships that come down to develop those things. And so I just want to make it be known that the relationships that are occurring inside our district are wonderful, coming down to the feeder levels, and we need to improve them. And we need to beef up certain programs. We need to invest in those programs. And new uniforms are always a great investment because that's the first thing that's put out in front of the new crowd. So,
Director Klein Jerome.
Okay, the question before us, this discussion is school colors. Are we actually voting on this? I didn't vote when we painted Jefferson. I don't know what color it is inside. I don't know, are you actually bringing this to a vote on colors? This seems like really not our thing, but.
It was mainly to give the long-range facilities committee and the architects kind of an idea on what direction the board wanted to go. Director Barnes.
Director Klein Jerome, I'm glad you asked that question because this probably really is an administrative situation to make a recommendation. However, the way the superintendent just described the choice was very different than what our discussion was. And I do think it actually presents a choice point, whether or not we want a unified district feeder school or we want to sort of continue with this celebration of diversity. Those are two fundamentally different pathways. And I think what you're suggesting is that at this moment, we may need to contemplate a different pathway from just celebrating the diversity of all of these. I mean, you could imagine in Sudlow having the logos and the presentations and banners of all of the elementary schools that feed into Sudlow and so on and so forth to celebrate that diversity. But what I'm hearing in this discussion is maybe there's a different pathway that we need to consider right now.
Yes, and to clarify, our diversity is not the color of our schools. So this color scheme could represent diversity in the future if we decide to go with regional colors. But envision that. Envision we stay exactly how we've been, or in the central region, the color scheme is united. The clothes, the swag, the uniforms, things of that nature are united. Or we keep the exact vision that Bruce described, and that's where we are. And there's no research for this. So there's no research and studies. I'm sure that you could find that support either way. And so that's the direction that the long range facility team needs. And you're right, this is a management decision, but one of the ideas that we talked about is there's probably a fair amount of feedback that we would probably get from the board, as this is kind of a fork in the road. And so the first thing to do is bring it to the board to check a temperature. And so I think that was the purpose for bringing it here today. Fair?
Is there any? What's that? From a cost standpoint, if you went with the regionalized thing, you got blue and red, you got red and white. You can use blue at two areas. You can use red in 2 areas. And I'm sure we could get a lot of paint a lot cheaper than, I don't know if you guys have bought paint lately, but that stuff ain't cheap. All right, well, thank you for the input. Well, Director Posh.
So I guess I'd ask all the board members let's see, how do I want to ask this? Do you feel comfortable with the long range planning committee making this decision, or do you feel it should be a board decision?
You got Dan on there and Bruce on there. Sure. Let them make
D-
the decision.
Director Beck.
I like the way Superintendent Schneckloth kind of summed up the differences. I appreciate the opportunity to give feedback, but as Director Klein-Jerome reminded us, we're not in the business of the day-to-day management. So yes, this is a kind of an important decision, and I think it's important for the board to weigh in, but I don't think it's something we vote on. necessarily. So I don't, whatever you guys decide is fine, at least with me. I think it's important to hear from us, but I don't think it's our decision to make.
What, I guess to help the process along, I'll just put the superintendent on the spot and Josh too, if you want to chime in. What do you need? I know we were looking for feedback and things like that. I'm obviously not going to pull the board here, but you guys are basically you're wanting feedback on if we want a regional or status quo.
Correct. That was the discussion that we were hoping to have tonight. We had that discussion. And so now it's upon us to go back and formulate a plan.
Does anyone have anything else on this? Man, we really zipped through them items requiring action and got held up here. All right. Seeing and hearing no other discussion on this, I'll move on to administrative reports.
Well, I would like to, before Kevin talks on this, Kevin and Jamie have worked incredibly hard together, and I think this is another example of our internal finance committee team moving forward. They work really, really hard at hawking this all of the time, and we talk about it on a constant basis. So I just wanted to say thank you for your hard work on this before I turn it over, Kevin.
Yeah, we felt for this part for administrative report, that's something to bring to your attention. True North gave us this data. We didn't know exactly where this was going to go, but we're very mindful that our second largest component of our expenses is our health insurance expense. So Jamie and I spend a lot of time trying to figure out strategies that we need to change or strategies we need to reinforce, or whatever it might be. And this is something that the True North reps came to us and said, since we simply flipped our prescription medicine with Med1, the way they structure their rebate programs and how they do the prior authorizations with a minimal, extremely minimal effect on employees. We don't want to affect employees. We just wanted you to see this number that we saved $7.2 million over the last 2 years just by switching companies for our prescriptions. We're always continuing to look at more efficient ways of doing things that impact our staff the least. And we just wanted to bring that to your attention, that there are always things we're coming with, and we're constantly going through that on a regular basis.
And to add to that is that $7.2 million affects our insurance fund. So it's a positive savings for all of our staff and all of our employees that take our benefits plans, and helps keep our costs down where we don't have to do large increases or have to do plan designs where we increase co-pays, co-insurance, stuff like that. So every dollar we can save helps the bottom dollar for our employees.
Any questions? All right, I'll ask one of them. I think you kind of brought this up when we were doing negotiations, isn't it? Does this account with not utilizing some of those places to fill prescriptions? No, that doesn't factor into this. That will
That
be
doesn't
additional.
that doesn't factor into this number. So if we go into another lever that we can pull, is Walgreens and CVS are the two most expensive places to get your prescriptions filled out. So there is looking at the potential of increasing copays at those two places as like a convenience factor, because the intent is the more people we can get out of Walgreens and CVS, the more money our employees can save in the prescription plan.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? All right, thank you. Are there any board requests? All right. Board reflections, we'll start with Director Barnes.
Just wanted to mention that the Migration is Beautiful presentation was absolutely terrific. I mean, innovative curriculum, place-based learning, pride building in the community. That is something really for this school district to celebrate, and was really, really pleased to hear that they're also going to be looking at African American history in the Quad Cities and Davenport. So really impressive presentation.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Director Potts.
Yeah, I would second that. Migration is beautiful. It's very neat. It's unique. It's personalized to us, and it's fascinating.
Thank you, Director Potts. Director Klein Jerome.
Since I am on the committee that also meets with LULAC, I appreciate their partnership, what they have done, how much time they've invested in it, and the fact that now they're willing to take on the Black history issue as well. That's really cool. The LULAC Council 10 does more than just come to us and say, okay, what are you doing for us? I mean, they are, what can we do for you kind of thing. And so I really appreciate that. The other thing I'd like to point out is, as I sat here, I appreciate that the data wall is steps to success, because I have looked at it several times while I'm sitting here. Noticed that the ACT turnout was fairly high compared to the others, but it was kind of neat to have that information right there without us bringing it up and talking about it. And I really like the fact that our audit shows that we have corrected many of the findings from last year. So that was a big deal to us last year. We can't have this many, and we have made progress to it. So that's good too.
Thank you, Vice President Klein Jerome. Director Beck.
The Migration is Beautiful was amazing. Absolutely. Love it.
Thank you, Director Beck. Director Poston.
I think there are a lot of good things going on at this meeting. Obviously, the Migration is Beautiful. I think is something that we can continue to grow on. But then, approval of plans for artificial turf for our 3 high schools, and then again having a clean audit. I think those are pretty big deals too.
Thank you, Director Poston. Director Hayes.
I enjoyed the migration, of course, and I also enjoyed the full discussion on the long-range facility plan. This meeting, basically this discussion, is just verification that we're not a cookie-cutter district, that we all have our various opinions, and it's kind of nice to articulate them out loud and just see where everyone is. And I'm sure everyone at this table realizes that we're responsible for finances and policies. We're not responsible for paint, but we still have an opinion.
Thank you, Director Hayes. Superintendent Schneckloff.
I echo the sentiments about Migration is Beautiful. It's just the kids come alive when they realize that the Cook's Point and all of those awesome artifacts.
Thank you, Superintendent. Since everyone else did Migration is Beautiful, I'm going to say I am glad we were able to vote on all those contracts and get that done. That was a lot of stuff through items requiring action, and we powered through it. And now everyone can go home and watch the rest of the Hawkeyes game. With that, Director Potts, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I'm assuming there's going to be no discussion. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. All right. Thank you.